All right, here we go. Let me just do a quick thing here because I actually did forget to do one quick thing here. Because it's a case of the Sundays, I guess. Sorry about this, y'all. But yeah, we're gonna be a little bit. Let me just set this up here. I forgot to do this before I went live, and that was my fault. Let's see. There we go. Okay, and we're good. All right. I fixed that. Let me just make sure we're live, and we will be dancing like soldiers in the battlefield. It looks like YouTube is up. What's up, YouTube? How are you? And Rockfin, where we at? Rockfin, it looks like we're good. Yes. Okay, let me make sure we're good. Are we good? Yes, we are. All right. We got Rockfin, we got YouTube. We got everything going. All right. Let's go ahead and officially get started. Sorry about the delay there. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, good evening to everybody catching this live. Happy Passover to those who celebrate. Happy Easter to those who celebrate. For those who don't celebrate, a happy day. Good job. Way to go. For everyone checking out the podcast later, if you celebrate Easter or Passover, hope you had a great one. If you don't, hope you had a wonderful weekend anyway. Do your thing. Live it well. Awesome. Good to see everybody. Good to be here. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron. We have a lot to talk about today. And I'm going to be making a pretty big announcement at the end of this stream and before I do the post-stream chat. So pretty big announcement concerning the future of Get Your News On with Ron. But first, we're going to be talking about the animation workers walkout over at Disney. And we're also going to be talking about some more updates on the Restrict Act. You know, I've been covering the Restrict Act a lot. I'm going to continue to because it's freaking the Patriot Act Part 2 as far as I'm concerned. But first, so let's check this out. This happened earlier this week over at Disney here in Los Angeles. And I think this thread from More Perfect Union really captures it all. And this is a TikTok from the account My Quarter Life Crisis. And we're going to watch this. Let me go ahead and tee this up here. We're just going to go ahead and watch this thing in its entirety.
7 years. I moved to Los Angeles in 2017 to work as an intern down the street in advertising for Disney, where I made $19 an hour. I took a pay cut to come work on Frozen 2, one of the biggest billion-dollar franchises this company has. And it took me nearly 3 years to get back to the pay that I was making as an intern. The company knows that there are thousands of people like me willing to take a pay cut to follow their dreams, and they have taken advantage of it for long enough. It's time for production management to be treated as the skilled craft that it is, and time for us to be paid a reasonable wage for the cost of living in Los Angeles. I have a career working on successful movies that are known across the globe, that are merchandised and profit well. I should not have to dog sit and borrow money from my parents in order to make ends meet. Work does not just fall into our artists' laps and then onto the screen. Production management spends the whole work week advocating for our departments in order to get the materials that our artists need to work. We're not just note takers or conduits of information. We're active key players who strategize, think critically, and build partnerships to boost morale in the darkest of times. Legendary director John Musker, in the Directing of Animation Handbook, sang the praises of production management. He put it best when he said, "Me? I'm so disorganized that if I was left to my own devices, maybe the movies would get done. But it would be difficult." Anyone that works here know that you can spitball ideas all day. We do it all the time. But until milestones are set and plans are made, they're just that, ideas. Not movies, not franchises, just ideas. But here's an idea. You could let Animation Guild join, you could let Production Management join the Animation Guild and get the representation we deserve. Thank you.
So a lot going on here. So first of all, just to clarify something on our on the thumbnail for the stream, I just used the term animators, and I didn't think about it until a little bit like a little bit later, right before the stream, that maybe that kind of all encompassing term wasn't the best terminology to use. However, animation workers would have been a bit too long for the thumbnail. I just kind of used animators in the all encompassing sense. But just to be clear, sometimes when you say animator, people just think, oh, the artist. It's not the artists in this case, it's the production management side of animation. So, if that term wasn't technically correct, I do apologize. One could argue that it's fine, like it's all still under the animation umbrella, and it is. But so let's get into it. First of all, I can tell you this from my limited experience. Um, what these workers do, the production management side of animation, is so incredibly essential. It is just so ridiculously essential because animation, the production of animation, everything from the drawing to the storyboarding to putting it in motion to the technicalities involved, which I can only speak to so well because I'm not in animation directly myself. But I can tell you it is a ton of work, an awful lot of work, and it takes many, many hours. And without people in production management doing the type of work, like the person in the video, it would be complete chaos. You need those people to kind of organize, as they mentioned in the video, to make sure that animators have the tools they need, to make sure they have the time allotted they need, to make sure things are staffed properly, to make sure the workflow is going the way it needs to make sure the storyboards are assembled correctly. It is a huge task. And these people are working on movies that have generated billions, and they're getting paid, in many cases, less than $19 an hour for their expertise. And yes, it is an expertise. As they mentioned in that video, they're not note takers. They're not just like getting coffee or whatever. Which, by the way, even if they were, they should still be getting paid a living wage for Los Angeles, regardless of what they're doing. But point is, they have a very high level of expertise with what they do. And these companies, in particular here, Disney, is taking advantage of the fact that they have a dream and they want to exploit that dream. And, again, this is, I can speak to some of this a little personally here too, because this is part of the reason that Lucy and Ron, my webcomic, part of the reason it went on hiatus was just because of the the huge labor distribution difference between myself and the illustrator Chris. And you know, it's a very hard thing to do, especially when, in the case of Lucy and Ron, it was just sort of a labor of love for us, and we all had other things that we had to do to pay our bills. But it's still very difficult to figure out that right production schedule, to organize things in a way so that it's not overwhelming and at a level that cannot be feasibly met by people. Because again, animation, like every single thing is a different picture. Like every single sequence, it takes a different drawing for that, and then you move it all. Like it's a ton of work. It is a ton of work, and without people orchestrating the way that work is supposed to go, you would just have like studios full of artists pulling their freaking hair out, screaming at the top of their lungs. So you get the idea. I mean, I think I pretty much emphasized how important this work is. And the fact that these people are not even getting paid a living wage is criminal beyond comprehension. And again, these companies are raking in the billions. And this goes into a bigger theme. A bigger theme. The person in this video mentioned I shouldn't have to pet sit. They said. They said I shouldn't have to rely on money from my parents. Now, the person in this video is in a situation where they're lucky enough that their parents can help them. Apparently, I mean, according to what they said in the video, not everyone is in that situation. And I can tell you this: I am noticing that difference in Hollywood. I am noticing the difference. A couple years back, basically right before the pandemic, and it has continued since the pandemic, or since the shutdown, I should say. We're still in a pandemic, but since the shutdown portion of the pandemic, um, I noticed a trend where I would go to a comedy open mic to work on some new material. And a lot of the new comics coming up, a lot of the younger comics coming up, a lot of their jokes were about growing up rich and having a maid and having a butler or whatever. And I would kind of be like, why is that? Well, here's why that is. It's because it's pretty much impossible for an average working class person to come to Los Angeles and work on a dream. That's pretty much nearly impossible these days. So the only people coming here, the new generation of creatives coming to Los Angeles, are all, not all, but mostly way too high of a majority kids with rich parents. Now, it's always kind of been that way. There's always been that going on, ever since. I mean, geez, I guess since forever. There's certain, if you went to Ivy League schools and you wrote for some of the Huber magazines there, you were pretty much guaranteed a job in writing. If you wrote for the Lampoon at Harvard or something like that, you were pretty much guaranteed a gig. Why? Well, because so many alumni are comedy writers. So that's always kind of been a thing. And generally speaking, it's wealthy people who go to Ivy League schools. Are there exceptions? Of course. But generally speaking, it's wealthier people that are able to do such a thing. So this has always existed. But what I'm saying is it has gone up to 11 where, back in the 90s and even like the mid aughts and even basically up to my millennials, you could go to Los Angeles with a little bit of money in your pocket and a pocket full of dreams, and you could survive. You could get some kind of a day job, being a server, being a barista, whatever. You could, try to get an agent if you're trying to be an actor, try to get a manager or whatever, or try to get a writing job, and you could get by. You could survive. Were you surviving outstandingly? In many cases, no, but you could do it. And hey, I'm one of those people. I came to Los Angeles. I had already been a road comic for years before I came to Los Angeles, meaning I was making a living as a comedian, driving around the country doing stand up. I came to Los Angeles to try to do something in the industry, and I planned on being a writer. Still doing that, by the way. So I came to Los Angeles. I got off the road, which means I didn't have a job anymore, really. I mean, my job was driving around the country doing stand up. If I'm not going to do that anymore because I want to be in Los Angeles, well, obviously I don't have a job anymore. So I came to Los Angeles and started to try to get gigs in Los Angeles. I was a pet sitter on the side when I first got to town. That was something I did. Pretty common thing, as the person in that video also did some pet sitting. And I was leaving town for college gigs. I was performing at colleges a bunch. And eventually I started working for a show. So, you know, those types of stories are not all that common anymore. It's not really as easy to do such a thing. So that's the bigger theme going on here. And there's a number of reasons why that's going on. One of it is because Los Angeles and just cities in general across the country are just so unaffordable. It is so, I mean, everywhere in the United States has gotten harder and harder to afford, but wages have not kept up with anything. Our wages are just, I mean, it has not kept up with inflation at all. It has not kept up with the direction the dollar has gone in at all. If wages kept up with inflation, the minimum wage would be about, I think, $23 an hour, something like that. It's not. Nowhere close to that. The fight for 15, quote unquote, is now purely symbolic. It should have been 15 years ago. Now, I mean, 15 itself is not a living wage. $15 an hour, not a living wage anymore. So even in some of the best parts, or even in some of the parts that are best for living wages in the United States, wages are almost livable. And studies are revealing that you need 2 and 3 jobs to just afford an apartment in so many places in this country. And honestly, it balances out because even places that are affordable, a lot of the times the wages are next to nothing. It's like, okay, well, gee, my rent's only $500 a month or whatever. I mean, I'm $500 a month. Good luck finding that anywhere. But my rent's only so much. But gee, my job only pays $9 an hour or $10 an hour. So it balances out. You're struggling wherever you're at. In Los Angeles or San Francisco, okay, you're making 16, $17 an hour for the same job, but your rent is also what, 3 times as much. So it really, basically, wherever you are, they're pretty much screwing you. So, and here you have a situation. So let's get back to this story specifically here. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but I feel like there's a lot of other themes going on here. So, More Perfect Union. This is from a More Perfect Union thread. Last year, we spoke to animators as they started to organize. These media giants can afford to meet the workers' demand. So, animators who make hit shows for Netflix, Disney, and Cartoon Network are taking on the Hollywood giants. This happened around this same time last year. This video they reference is from March of 2022. And the Animation Guild was calling for a new deal. We covered this on the show when it happened last year. So that's basically where things are at. They're still fighting this battle. Now, IATSE, I always forget exactly what that stands for, but it's basically the union for theatrical and stage professionals here in Los Angeles and elsewhere. It's national. It's across the country. But, the main branches being mainly in Los Angeles, New York, and stuff like that. They did threaten a couple strikes. They ended up reaching some temporary settlements before it got to that point. But the battle is still ongoing. And by the way, they're one of those examples why a lot of times you can't just threaten a strike. You have to go on strike because they threatened to strike. They got a little bit of what they wanted, but not all of what they wanted and all of what they needed. And as we can see, the fight is still continuing because now it's production, people in production management who are fighting to join the actual animation union because they are part of animation and they are an essential part of it. Animation is not just the artist. The artists are also an essential part of it. I'm not trying to say, like one, certainly one is not better than the other. They are equal as far as how essential they are, but it's not just the artist. It goes into more than that. So now you have these production workers trying to join the union. And again, it's just part of such a bigger thing. And I see it as such, it's so disturbing to me. So here, let's take a look at this. Um, Here's the petition. This is from IATSE, the union behind entertainment. Open letter to Walt Disney Animation Studios and Disney leadership. We are writing this letter to encourage Disney leadership to do the right thing and recognize the demand of production coordinators, production managers, and production supervisors to join IATSE Local 839, the Animation Guild. This is the same union that represents the artists and TDs we work alongside each and every day. The Walt Disney Company is a massive company with a legacy that spans 100 years. It is time for Disney to recognize the contribution that production workers make to ensure the creative, financial, and cultural success of Disney's animated features and special projects. It's time we have the protections of a union, like our MPEG editors and artists and TD colleagues in the Animation Guild. Production is a craft in its own right. And by forming our union, we are saying we deserve to have viable and sustainable career paths, living wages, and the ability to retire with dignity. So, and then it goes on. Sincerely, production coordinators, production supervisors, production managers, union represented WDAS employees, and additional supporters. So, isn't it mind blowing that people who work on Frozen, people who work on these Disney productions that literally they generate billions, and the production managers who oversee the animation, who oversee the production of it, and without them, again, production would just be chaos. Without that, they're basically the glue that allows the creativity to flow. And they get paid less than $19 an hour. That is absolutely criminal. And as someone, again, as someone who has very, very limited experience in animation, but enough to know how criminal that is, I could tell you, wow, that is just evil. That is just straight up evil. And by the way, um, a side note here. I mentioned Lucy and Ron as being like my experience in the animation adjacent world, and Lucy and Ron, of course, is a web comic. It's not like a full fledged animation. But when we were writing, or when I was writing some of the scripts and we were looking into animation, we realized how laborious the whole thing was firsthand. Um, I am very proud to report Lucy and Ron is coming back, and we should have more news on that in June, which I'm really, really excited about. Lucy and Rod's going to be back in June, so I'm really stoked for that. Let me go ahead and leave the link to this petition in the chat here that you can sign. And yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to move on to the Restrict Act here in a second, but this just goes into the broader thing of just, we're sold this idea that there's a quote unquote American dream, which of course is nonsense on many levels. But one of the quote unquote elements of that, quote unquote American dream, excuse me, is that if you want to do something creative with your life, there are places in this country, namely LA, New York, where there are resources available to you that aren't really available in many other parts of the world, straight up. Los Angeles is really the showbiz capital, and to an extent, it still is, although that is changing. And if you really want to do that as a professional, if you want to be an animator, if you want to be an actor, if you want to be a writer, if you want to be a comedian on a show, whatever, you can go to Los Angeles and you can take your shot. You're not guaranteed success, but you're guaranteed a chance. And in many ways, that is still true. In many ways, with all the problems of this country, Los Angeles, even to this day, is still a place where anything you want to do in the creative world, anything you can imagine, there are resources here that can help you accomplish that goal. Are you guaranteed success? Hell no. But there are resources here that can help you accomplish the goal you're going after. Hey, Lucy, what's up? I wouldn't be where I'm at personally if it wasn't for Los Angeles. If I never would have moved to Los Angeles, there's a lot of things that have happened to me, career-wise or whatever, that wouldn't have happened otherwise. But here you have a situation where they're just not giving people who do this incredibly hard work living wages. So I hope they get everything they're asking for and then some, because this is just straight up evil. And again, it goes into the bigger thing that people can't. I mean, it's sad. It's so sad that people can't just go to Los Angeles with a dream anymore. I think it's really freaking sad. Or if you can, it's because your parents are rich. And I'm seeing it firsthand, folks. All right, let's move on to the Restrict Act, which, by the way, that video that we played, the More Perfect Union circulating, where is it from? Well, it's from TikTok. And what does the Restrict Act try to do? It tries to ban TikTok, among other things. Now, for those of you who may not be hip to the Restrict Act, chances are a lot of you are. I've been talking about it a lot on my show. I've been talking about it a lot on Status Coup. So the Restrict Act is this piece of legislation that started out as just more of more of a just Chinese fear mongering thing and trying to ban TikTok. It has gotten even worse than where it started. It started out as a very bad piece of legislation. It has gotten progressively worse because now it is just so vague and broad. It basically goes after anything. It could criminalize having a VPN, which is a virtual private network. People use VPNs to keep their location and web browsing anonymous. It could criminalize having one of those. Now, we're going to go to this article that I think downplays it. And then we're going to go to some of the other things that basically point to how dangerous this legislation really is. So this is from a 4WWL. All right. So verifying claims about the Restrict Act and VPN use for restricted apps or site. Several readers asked how the Restrict Act would affect VPN use. Here's what we can verify, quote unquote. A bill in Congress called the Restrict Act has made headlines in recent months over claims that it could result in a ban on a popular social media app, TikTok. But some people online say the legislation could have a broader impact. All right. So the question: would the Restrict Act make it illegal to use a VPN to access restricted apps or websites? Okay. So the answer. Now, this is according to the article here. Ready for this? Needs context. Okay. Why are they claiming it needs what are they where are they going with this? So here's what the article says. The Restrict Act does not explicitly ban VPNs. Okay, that's technically true, or impose criminal penalties on people who use them. One of the bill's sponsors says it would be used to punish companies, not individual users accessing a potential banned app like TikTok. But some experts say the bill's broad language leaves room for doubt. I would agree with that. The bill's broad language leaves room for a lot of doubt. So here's the thing, though. So this is kind of downplaying. All right, well, it needs context. Technically, it doesn't say that. But here's the thing about the Restrict Act. The Restrict Act, first of all, refers to desktop applications, mobile applications, technology communication applications. Basically, when you look at all of the pieces of technology the Restrict Act refers to, it's basically anything. The only thing the Restrict Act doesn't include is a pen and paper. So basically, any device, any application that you have that could be from a place that's not the United States, that's subject to scrutiny under this bill. Now, here's some more verbiage from the bill. This is from the recent article that we've been citing. The Restrict Act grants the U.S. Secretary of Commerce the broad power to, quote, identify, deter, disrupt, prevent, prohibit, investigate, or otherwise mitigate any risk from any covered transaction by any person or with respect to any property that the Secretary determines to pose an undue or unacceptable risk in several different areas. These include federal elections, quote, information and technology, communications, technology, products, and services. Again, that's basically everything. And, quote, critical infrastructure or digital economy. Okay, that's basically everything. As well as coercive or criminal activities by a foreign adversary that are designed to undermine democratic processes and institution or steer policy and regulatory decisions in favor of the strategic objectives of a foreign adversary to the detriment of the national security of the United States. That is incredibly broad, as are informations and communications technology products and services, critical infrastructure or digital economy, coercive or criminal activities. Okay, so that part is a little more specific. So let's look at this last paragraph. Coercive or criminal activities by a foreign adversary that are designed to undermine democratic processes and institutions. Okay, that's a little specific. I'll give you that one. But wait, they're not done. Or steer policy and regulatory decisions. Steer policy, that basically means anything expressing an opinion in favor of the strategic objectives of a foreign adversary to the detriment of the national security of the United States. So that last part there, the first part, criminal activities, okay, that's a little specific. I'll give you that. But that last part, steer policy, something that basically could be summarized as or anything that expresses an opinion that's different from whatever the corporate narrative of the United States is. Anything at all. And again, it applies to so many types of applications. Believe me, VPNs are under that umbrella. So this whole, oh, well, it needs context. No, it does not need context. Just because they don't say the words VPN or they don't say TikTok by name, you read this stuff, it's obvious how that's going to be enforced. Any application or any mobile app, desktop app, piece of technology advice, something in the digital economy. Basically, if you have a piece of paper and a pen from Canada, that should be fine. Oh, and by the way, who is one of the main architects of this act? Mark Warner out of Virginia. Mark Warner, Democrat out of Virginia, is one of the architects of this act. He is one of the most wealthy members of the entirety of the Congress, i.e., the Senate and the House. He's one of the wealthiest members. Where does he have a lot of investments? Well, he has a lot of investments everywhere. One of the places he has some investments is in open source technology. So, the guy authored a bill, or partially authored a bill. I'm pretty sure he didn't author the whole thing by himself. There were other people too, but he played a big role in the authorship of a bill that cracks down on any application from anywhere that isn't in the United States. Oh, and he just so happens to have huge financial interests in domestic software. That would be the equivalent of somebody who has a huge financial interest, someone in government who has a huge financial interest in maple syrup production in the United States, all of a sudden having a bill demonizing anything that comes from Canada. Like, oh, no, we got to be careful of this stuff. The Canadian government's trying to influence and blah, 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 blah. Oh, really? I feel like you just don't want their maple syrup to come through because you have a financial interest in maple syrup. So, and again, this has bipartisan support. The Biden administration has said that they would sign this. Biden's for it. Democrats and Republicans are for it. Mark Warner, one of the main authors, he's a Democrat. A lot of the Republicans are for this as well. And there is bipartisan opposition. Jamal Bowman had some great things to say about this bill and why he doesn't support it. He had some really great things to say about why this bill's terrible. So did AOC and Rand Paul. I don't agree with Rand Paul on a whole lot, but Rand Paul really nailed it on this one. So you have people on the Democratic side, on the Republican side, who are getting this one right. Now, whether it's Rand Paul or Jamal Bowman or AOC, you know how I am. Actions speak louder than words. And I don't really give a politician the benefit of the doubt until they vote a certain way. So I won't be satisfied until all these people speaking out against this bill actually vote against it if it comes to a vote. Now, it still has to slither its way completely out of committee, but it's getting there. And they tried to fast track it, and Rand Paul actually put a stop on that. Rand Paul helped put a stop on fast tracking it, which, hey, I'm thrilled he did that. When it comes to this piece of legislation, I'll take the allies anywhere we can get them. Because guess what? Guess what? This is the Patriot Act Part 2. I mean, you look at how broad this thing is. This is the Patriot Act Part 2. This is basically the Digital Patriot Act. This is the Patriot Act specific for our digital world, the digital village. So that's what's going on with the Restrict Act. Now, here's the good news too, folks. There is a new call to action. Please, please, please sign this petition. You can go to stoptherestrictact.org and throw your support behind this So let me pull this up for you. Stoptherestrictact.org. A dangerous new bill called the Restrict Act is gaining momentum in Congress with support from Democrats and Republicans and even the White House. The bill claims to address valid privacy and security concerns with TikTok. It doesn't. But this is about so much more than just TikTok. Restrict gives Biden and all future presidents extraordinary new powers to ban Americans from using entire apps simply by claiming they pose a threat to national security outside of any democratic process. Politicians are pushing this bill to show how, quote, tough on China they are. But instead of protecting us, they're pushing for an internet policed by the government, just like the internet in China. sign the petition to tell Congress and President Biden stop the Restrict Act. So go to stoptherestrictact.org. Yeah, that's another thing this policy does, by the way. It messes with something called the Berman Amendments. Now, what are the Berman Amendments? Those are the amendments that gives United States citizens the right to pursue information and to have access to information from places that aren't the United States. If you mess with the Berman amendments, it could give Joe Biden or any other president, future president, not just the ability to ban entire apps from other places, saying they're, quote, a security risk, but also the ability to limit what information we get from places outside the United States. That is chillingly disturbing, especially when the United States is the leading nation in the world when it comes to war propaganda. So there we go. Let me drop that. I'll go ahead and drop that petition in the chat as well. It is just stoptherestrictact.org, y'all. So go to stoptherestrictact.org. I'm not going to stop talking about this. I'm not going to stop highlighting this issue because I consider this the Patriot Act Part 2. And the reason the Patriot Act happened was because a lot of people weren't paying attention. A lot of people were hyper-focused on other things, and they pushed through this terrible legislation that I think most people in government didn't even bother reading. The same thing could easily happen here. So I'm not going to stop screaming about it. All right, and last thing on the agenda today before we go over to the post-stream chat is a pretty big announcement concerning the future of Get Your News On with Ron. And so I'm just going to go ahead and make it now. There will be more information that comes to the surface in the coming weeks and months, actually. But in June, I believe, let me get the exact date for you. I want to say it's like June 10th or 11th. Here, let me pull it up. I should have made sure I had that date ahead of time. Sorry about that, but I wanted to get it. June 11th. Yes. June 11th, folks. June 11th will be the last day of Get Your News On with Ron in its current inception. Now, that does not mean Get Your News On with Ron is going away. It's not. Because I like doing Get Your News On with Ron. It's it's fun to do. But here's the deal. I'm basically kind of taking Get Your News On with Ron back to its roots to make room for a new podcast project I've been wanting to do for a long time. Since 2015, actually. And a while ago, I tweeted and I did a Twitter poll and I said, there's a new podcast series I've been wanting to do for a long time. And I think it's kind of now or never. What do you guys think? Should I do it? Should I do it even if it means there is less time for Get Your News On with Ron? And 83% of folks said yes, 17% said no. And I found myself aligned with the majority where I kind of wanted to go for it. So how will Get Your News On with Ron be changing? Well, instead of doing two separate streams the way we do now, where we just do one stream and then a post-stream chat, it's just going to be one big stream. So the whole thing is going to be a little more casual, a little more, I mean, I'm still going to like prepare stories ahead of time and stuff like that, but it's going to be a little more like chatty throughout the entire thing. As opposed to, okay, here's the stories. Now we're going to do a chat, and they're going to be two separate streams. It's just going to be one big long thing. And then it will be the full stream will be available for patrons and Rockfin Premium members after the fact. And for people listening to the audio podcast of Get Your News On with Ron, that is going to go away to make room for a new podcast series that I'll be launching in July. So for those of you who are already patrons, pretty much nothing's changing, except it'll just be one big long stream instead of two shorter streams. So for patrons, Rockfin Premium members, nothing's really changing. For people who get the audio podcast is going away in June to make room for a new podcast series that I am incredibly, incredibly excited about. And I'll be announcing more details on that soon. So That's basically the big announcement. Get Your News On With Ron is not ending. It's just, honestly, it's going back to its roots, really. When Get Your News On With Ron started, it was kinda just like a fun, casual, chatty stream that I did, on the side, kind of. And then, slowly but surely, it became more of a front and center thing. But I never really intended it to be that way. I always liked doing it. It was always fun, but it was always meant as a more, oh, this thing. You know what I mean? Um and then it became front and center, which was cool and good. But now it's going back to a more I don't like using the word side project because that I feel like that kind of devalues it, but I can't think of a better way to frame it. But basically, it's going back to its roots where it's just a more casual, chatty, communal thing. Again, it's how it started. So it's going to be more chatty, it's going to be more casual, and it's going to just be one big stream. It's not always going to be on Sundays. It'll be various days, and I'll announce the days ahead of time on Patreon. For those of you who get the audio podcast and you rely on the audio podcast, please, please, please go to patreon.com/romplacone. You can join my Patreon for as low as $1 a month. My Patreon is a give what you can level. So it just needs to be one full unit of whatever your currency is, $1, a pound, whatever it is. And you will continue to get your news on with Ron the way you always have. And again, this is all to make way for a new podcast series that I'm launching. I will be talking more about that in the coming weeks. And months, because I plan to launch it in July. But I can tell you this. It is going to be, I'll tell you this much about it right now. It's going to be by far the best thing I have ever done in this space. By far. And it's also likely going to be the last thing I ever do in this space. Because it's more than just a podcast, it's also a quest and a mission. And the mission is going to take a very long time. It's honestly going to take about 20 years. So in 20 years, there might not even still be podcasts. Who knows? Um, who knows where I'll be in 20? I mean, who knows? I mean, hey, so that's what's at stake. That's what's happening. So Get Your News On With Ron is not ending, but it is changing. And was it June 10th or June 11th? I should have wrote it down. June 11th. Yes, I am going to write that down. June 11th will be the last day. Why June 11th, you might ask? Well, because I leave for tour shortly after that. So June 11th will be the last day of Get Your News On With Ron in its current state. Get Your News On With Ron is not ending, but it is changing from its current state. And June 11th is the last day of the current Sunday Get Your News On With Ron streams. And I'll be making more detailed announcements as time goes on. But yeah. And by the way, tour dates, I guess I'll announce that next. I got them. Go to ronplacone.com for tickets. April 14th, I'll be in Los Angeles, California. That's this coming Friday. Grab your tickets now. Also, April 22nd, for everybody online, maybe Los Angeles is far from you, but Graham Elwood and myself are doing a live stream of our pilot presentation of the game show Anything Can Happen. You can watch online. We're doing a thing with Nowhere Comedy. You can watch online. That's April 22nd at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. You can join us online and watch that show. I've tweeted out the link. You can go to my Twitter at Ron Placone or Facebook Ron Placone. And I've shared the link to that, and I'll be sharing the link on my Instagram and stuff like that too. And I'll share the link here on YouTube as well, so you can join us there for that. May 12th, third show in Los Angeles for me at the Glendale Room. Tickets available now at ronplacone.com. June 16th, Madison, Wisconsin. June 17th, Minneapolis, Minnesota. June 23rd, Detroit, Michigan. June 28th, Bloomington, Indiana. June 29th, Chicago. Chicago, Madison, and Minneapolis. Use the promo code Lucy at checkout for discounted tickets. Don't wait. Get your tickets now. Madison, Minneapolis, and Chicago. Don't wait. The early bird special goes away soon, so get your tickets now. Do not wait. Edinburgh, Scotland. I'll be at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival August 16th through 27th. My shows are at the venue 32 Below in the Little Cellar Room at 4 p.m. daily. That's Edinburgh, Scotland, August 16th through 27th. You can go to romplicone.com for all the information on those shows now. And October 21st, I'm bringing the comedy series to my neighborhood of San Pedro. So tickets and information, because you don't need tickets for the Edinburgh shows. It's free admission to those shows. But tickets and information for all shows are available at romplicone.com. For everyone tuning in live, don't go anywhere, because we will be. I'll be right back with the post-show chat. We can chat more about kind of all the upcoming announcements I just made, and for everybody else, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow. I say peace, love, and a general strike.